Colin Cowherd just absolutely dismantled Kelsey Plum on a national broadcast, and the WNBA landscape has permanently shifted. You had Kelsey Plum, representing LA, seemingly unable to resist taking a swipe at Caitlin Clark. While Plum was off dodging meetings and managing her competitor league, Clark was posted up on NBC, single-handedly shouldering the very sport that the old guard has been steadily dismantling from within. The deception is visible now. The conflicts of interest are bare, and the envy, it is far more hideous than anyone dared to imagine. Forget the headlines. This is a seismic transfer of authority occurring in real time. The reality bomb Cowherd detonated is exactly what the league veterans prayed would stay buried. Stick around, because the details coming up will flip your perspective upside down. When Caitlin Clark entered the room, she didn't need a herald. She simply took her seat, tweaked the microphone, and went straight to business. That stint at the NBC analyst desk wasn't calculated as some dominance display, nor was she attempting to signal anything to the haters. She was merely executing her role, dissecting plays, discussing hoops, and fielding CBA inquiries with a tranquility that made every other person in the vicinity appear jittery. But here is the kicker. This is the exact same individual that seasoned pros have spent 2 whole seasons attempting to marginalize. When she arrived in the league, the establishment treated her like an intruder who hadn't earned her stripes. She took hard elbows away from the play and absorbed fouls that carried a malicious sting. Vets gave interviews downplaying her rookie stats, while peers dropped snarky posts claiming the league transcended any single athlete. She absorbed every bit of it in silence, continuing to drop buckets, distribute the rock, and pack stadiums that hadn't seen a full house in ages. We are all aware that Clark has fundamentally transformed the WNBA's identity, influencing everything from box office receipts to the way the game is played. Yet there she sat on national TV, addressing the collective bargaining agreement without casting blame on a soul. Zero ammunition used, no sob stories spun. She simply stated her belief that an agreement would be reached within a few weeks, pure, poised, and strictly professional. Clark refused to utilize that stage to insist on a place at the bargaining table, nor did she preach to anyone about equity. She neglected to remind the planet that she is the sole reason the league possesses the leverage to even discuss figures of this magnitude. She merely appeared, completed the task, and exited, leaving the rest looking diminutive in her wake. Pause and consider the timing here. The association was in the throes of an absolute catastrophe. The union was waging a very public battle against the owners. Battle lines were etched in the sand, and every pundit had a hot take. The strain on anyone associated with the WNBA was immense, and Clark found herself in the eye of the hurricane, willing or otherwise. Anyone with less confidence utilizes that NBC chair in a completely different manner. They drop breadcrumbs. They cast shadows without saying names, or let a pregnant pause speak volumes. That is the standard operating procedure for airing grievances. And make no mistake, Clark had every justification to be bitter, considering she is the cornerstone the league has staked its future upon. Yet she wasn't even invited to the table while the old guard mishandled the very empire she helped construct. Still, she selected the high road. Each response was calculated, every syllable intentional. She discussed the organization like someone genuinely invested in its survival. Unlike others seeking a fleeting opportunity to tally personal victories, that level of restraint is scarce, a discipline most never discover until the twilight of their careers, if at all. Having Caitlin Clark in the spotlight is non-negotiable because she is the catalyst propelling the WNBA toward an entirely new stratosphere. Colin Cowherd has been tracking this phenomenon since long before she ever laced up for a pro game. He likened her influence to Michael Jordan's third season, not for the jewelry or championships, but for how she completely rewired the culture surrounding the sport. Jordan transformed hoops into a global phenomenon, and Clark has replicated that exact feat for the women's game. She compelled folks who hadn't watched a second of WNBA action to grab their devices and purchase seats. Cowherd witnessed that NBC segment and voiced the collective thought, "Here stands a 22-year-old displaying more professionalism than vets with a decade of tenure." This is the athlete responsible for generating the very wealth everyone is currently scrapping over. There she sat, composed in the center of a tempest she didn't provoke, and he didn't sugarcoat his assessment. He highlighted the sheer insanity. The golden goose remaining poised on national TV, while the beneficiaries of her success were outside threatening to detonate the entire operation. The juxtaposition was practically scripting itself. Cowherd simply possessed the audacity to broadcast it. What resonated about his perspective was the precision. He wasn't just praising her jump shot. He was asserting that she grasps the concepts of leverage and timing better than veterans with 10 years of seniority ever have. Sometimes, remaining silent at the perfect instant roars louder than any words ever could. Walking into the fire with a cool head while the room spins out of control says everything without needing a single soundbite. Clark dropped that reality check on NBC. You cannot fake that level of poise. That is not some act rehearsed for the spotlight. That is her core, the same steel she has carried since stepping into a league that basically locked the door when she arrived. And honestly, it made every veteran screaming for attention look absolutely petty. Then came the myth that detonated right in their hands. For weeks, the union spun a very specific fairy tale, swearing the table was empty. The narrative was clear. Ownership was playing dirty, stalling, and refusing to pay these women what they earned. They marched into All-Star Weekend rocking tees that screamed, "Pay us what you owe us." They parked a giant inflatable rat outside the NBA shop, flooded the timeline, and fed sob stories to reporters who nodded without asking a single hard question. The public ate it up. And why not? The saga of workers battling corporate greed is a tune everyone knows the words to. Casual viewers who do not track the spreadsheets saw the slogans and immediately backed the squad. It was a perfect script until the facts leaked and the whole stage collapsed. A deal was sitting there the whole time. Not crumbs, not a slap in the face, but a massive, comprehensive package that would have revolutionized the pay scale. We are not talking about pocket change. Average checks were set to vault to $530,000 by 2026. Top earners would sniff $1 million. $300,000 right away, climbing to $2 million. $400,000 by 2031, cracking that $1 million. $100,000 barrier with revenue splits and bonuses included. That is triple what the league's queens take home today. The offer was stacked. Private jets, which they begged for, plus elite healthcare, beefed up pensions, and profit sharing linked to the sports explosion. The union hierarchy knew about this package the entire time they were crying poverty to the fans. They had the details in their inbox while modeling those protest shirts at the All-Star game. They knew the math was real while feeding the press lines about stingy owners. When the numbers hit the street, the vibe shifted instantly. The faithful who went to bat for them started asking what was going on. Comment sections filled with cheers turned into interrogations. People who retweeted the cause suddenly felt like they had been played. The association tried to scramble. They started throwing around jargon like gross versus net revenue, hoping the fog would let them escape. When they claimed the biggest raise in history was not enough, they dragged the goalposts back and prayed the spin would hold. The crowd was not having it. The trust was shattered. You cannot scream starvation when there is a feast on the table, get busted, and expect the audience to stay loyal. The house of cards stood tall until someone checked the foundation. Colin Cowherd nailed the absurdity of the whole circus. Players were treating seven-figure contracts like an insult. They demanded 30% of the gross from a business that has bled $300 million over 30 years. The league is heating up, but it is not a mint. The owners put forward a deal that honored the growth and paid the talent while keeping the lights on. The union pushed for a fantasy economic model that would have rewritten the laws of the business. The canyon between their demands and reality told the true tale. Then there were the empty seats in New York. After weeks of gridlock, ownership arranged a face-to-face in the Big Apple. This was the moment to lock the doors and hammer out a truce. The league cleared the decks. Owners flew in with financial heavy hitters and legal sharks. The suits arrived armed with data, forecasts, and ink-ready contracts. The setup proved just how critical they considered this standoff. Yet Kelsey Plum and Nafisa Collier were no-shows. These are not bench warmers. They sit on the executive throne of the players' union. These are the captains steering the ship, responsible for everyone from the global icons to the rookie fighting for a roster spot. Their excuse for blowing off the most pivotal meeting in history? Flight trouble out of Miami? Apparently, booking a ticket a day early was too complex. I have tried to keep these chats offline, but they clearly refuse to admit the house is burning. Meanwhile, roughly 40 other players logged in remotely, spending the Zoom call scribbling on notepads, ignoring the pitch, silent as the grave, doing the bare minimum to be marked present. The visual was an absolute disaster. The very same heavy hitters who had been screaming for Commissioner Adam Silver to show his face at the table to prove he wasn't bluffing. They demanded the head honcho sit in that room to demonstrate real commitment, yet they couldn't bother dragging themselves to New York to meet the people signing the checks. So, where exactly were Plum and Collier while the fate of the league hung in the balance? Here is where the plot thickens. Nafisa Collier isn't just a player, She is a co-owner of Unrivaled, a 3-on-3 startup gunning for the exact same talent, eyeballs, and cash as the WNBA. Kelsey Plum? She is holding a nice chunk of equity in that rival outfit too. And do not forget Brianna Stewart, who is deep in the mix with this venture as well. They are sitting at the bargaining table representing WNBA talent, all while clutching ownership shares in a competitor that strikes gold if the WNBA crashes and burns. Let that sink in. If the 2026 season hits a wall or goes dark, athletes barred from the big stage will need a new home. Many will flock to Unrivaled. And if WNBA paychecks remain stagnant, that rival league suddenly looks a whole lot sweeter financially. If the big league bleeds fan interest, the upstart is right there to scoop up the disillusioned masses. The conflict here isn't just smoke, it is a raging fire. It is staring everyone right in the face. Colin Cowherd saw it immediately. He voiced the quiet part out loud. You cannot honestly bargain for the shield while your bank account grows by betting on the other horse. It is like saying, I poured cash into a loser for 5 years, but now they are printing money. I am riding that investment to the moon. You simply cannot be trusted to shield the player base when your personal portfolio balloons if the talks implode. Those vacant seats in the Big Apple weren't just a PR nightmare. They were a neon sign pointing directly to where the true loyalties lie. 2 years of obstruction. This toxic energy during the CBA talks didn't just materialize out of thin air. From the moment Clark stepped onto the hardwood, a storm was brewing. Old guards who felt their spotlight fading made a conscious decision. Rather than embracing the revolution she sparked, they wasted 2 full seasons trying to dim her shine. It began between the lines. Clark would torch a defense for 30 points, and the vets would shrug to the press like it was nothing special. She would shatter rookie milestones, only to hear peers claim those history books didn't really count for much. The violence was blatant. Stray elbows, cheap shots completely divorced from the game, and targeted hits so constant the league office finally had to intervene. Referees began scrutinizing the tapes. Fines and suspensions started flying. Indiana literally signed Sophie Cunningham just to serve as a bodyguard against the relentless bullying. Look, when it all comes down to it, I'm going to have my squad's back. That is my job. I am a team-first player, so we are all good. Bear in mind, Cunningham earned a black belt in Missouri by the tender age of 6. The Fever desperately required that kind of steel because seasoned pros were crossing boundaries that simply do not exist in normal basketball. When a franchise has to hire a literal enforcer to keep their point guard in one piece, that speaks volumes. And away from the arena, the strategy was just as cynical. Established stars hopped on microphones to trash the wave of new supporters Clark attracted, branding them mere bandwagon jumpers. They whined that these newcomers only cared about a single superstar, rather than bowing down to the entire league's legacy. They acted personally insulted that folks who had never watched a minute of women's hoops were suddenly filling seats. Instead of opening the doors, they slammed them shut. They lectured. They shamed new viewers for lacking a history degree in the sport. Kelsey Plum went public during All-Star Weekend, practically waving away Clark's influence. She insisted the credit belonged to the old guard and pretended the explosive growth happening right now was just a happy accident. She spoke as if stadiums were packing themselves, as if TV numbers were skyrocketing by magic rather than because of the phenomenon everyone was actually tuning in to see. The data simply does not back up that fairy tale. Ticket sales, viewership, and profits all surged the instant Clark arrived. Not a moment sooner, and certainly not on a slow burn. When Clark walked in, the graph went vertical. Cowherd put it bluntly. The vets are behaving like bitter bandmates, furious that the rookie is the one writing the platinum hits. They resent that she is the sole reason they traded the Motel 6 for the 4 seasons. She built the very penthouse they are living in. Yet instead of saying thank you, they spent 2 years trying to lock her out. Clark drained more three-pointers in her debut year than Steph Curry managed during his first MVP campaign. She topped the entire association in assists as a rookie. Those stats humiliated players who had been grinding for a decade. Cowherd nailed it. The envy runs so deep because they know they cannot touch her brilliance on the floor. Every single player in the league is green with envy over Caitlin Clark. They couldn't break her spirit, so they tried to burn the whole house down instead. The players' union didn't stop at fabrication and vacant seats. As the labor deadline loomed and talks froze, they went nuclear. They slapped a total embargo on any communication between the athletes and the franchises. Gyms locked, phones silent, zero team operations. It was a total system failure. If the 2026 season was teetering on the edge, this blackout pushed it right over. No drills, No friendly check-ins, not even a text to management. The union drew a line in the sand and dared anyone to cross it. That wasn't negotiating. That was holding the entire sport for ransom. And look who pays the price. The Fever's roster was absolutely stacked heading into the new year. Boston, Mitchell, Hall, and Cunningham were locked and loaded, with chemistry forged in the fires of championship chases. Clark was hitting her absolute peak, ready for a run that would have shattered ratings records and launched the league into the stratosphere. This moratorium hit the pause button on all that greatness. The same veterans who spent years gripping that Clark got too much shine were now pulling stunts to cancel the season she was born to rule. The bitter irony of that was staring everyone right in the face. Think of the legions of fans converted to the game during Clark's explosive first 2 years. The Iowa sensation became a national obsession. We are talking about people who went to the ends of the earth just to see her take the court. Now they are watching their passion get treated like a cheap poker chip. The folks who bought season passes, planned family vacations, and introduced their daughters to hoops for the first time. Suddenly, they were locked out, helpless, and the public goodwill the union started with vanished into thin air. Message boards that used to be fan clubs turned into firing squads. Even the staunchest defenders started asking, what is the endgame here? Fans felt betrayed first by the lie that no offers existed, then by a tactic that punished them to score points in a boardroom. Cowherd didn't mince words. He pointed out that these vets were rejecting deals 10 times bigger than their old checks based on demands that ignored economic reality. He called it a suicide mission, noting simply, without Clark, the mega TV deal disappears. Without her, the sold-out arenas vanish, and those lucrative offers on the table evaporate. Every single cent the union was battling for came from the revenue stream Clark created. Using that cash as a weapon against the woman who earned it? That is not just ironic, it is tragic. If this season gets salvaged, it won't be thanks to the veterans who tried to cap Clark's influence. It will be because her presence, class, and star power built a league worth saving in the first place. Here is the reality check. Caitlin Clark didn't need to say a word to win this fight. She just showed up and balled out, while her detractors spent 2 years handing everyone the receipts of their envy. The lies about the deal, the empty chairs in New York, the jealousy nobody wanted to admit. Cowherd said it loud and clear, and now the whole country is waiting for the other shoe to drop. The 2026 season is still a question mark, but we know exactly who built the future and who almost torched it out of spite. Leave your opinion in the comments, and hit that bell so you are notified the next time we go this deep into the story.